Today we're going to look at the best dual class certification options and try to answer the question which one will serve you best as a tier. Welcome friends to a new episode of Lineage 2, hanging out today on the core server. This is a brand new guide. We are going to be answering the question today of which combination of dual class certifications is best for a Maestro tier around 110. There's obviously a lot of caveats to this entire test, but let me lay out the testing parameters for you. So the testing parameters are all things are equal. Everything that I've done, it was in the entire same fashion when I did all of my tests. I ran 3 different tests. I maintained my VIT. I used no boosts or consumables. I had full IS buffs with my IS, my Hierophant, with me the whole time. I used the same AoE macro the entire time. The only thing that's changed was the location and the dual class certifications as a test. So everything has been completely exactly the same for the duration of the entire test. Now, what do the tests look like? So here's my macro. This was the macro I ran the entire time. I ran with a 105 IS with full level 2 or level 5 buffs. With Palm that would come on occasion. So everything was completely equal. All of my skills were running at the exact time. All of my gear stayed exactly the same. It never changed. I ran 3 different tests. Test 1 was with Master's Rage. Actually, before we get into the details of the test, if you don't know where to change your dual class certifications, I'll leave a link or a card for that particular video, but in the event that you need to check it out, you can go to Aiden and go to the dual class manager. That's not for this video, but you guys can go check that out. So for those of you that are aware of your dual class certifications, test 1 was Master's Rage, which we're calling test 1 Master's Rage. It has Master's Rage, Death, and Recovery. Master's Rage is a chance to have 27% skill power added when using skills. Death is plus 5% skill critical damage, and Recovery is minus 4% cooldown. Now, the 3 places that I decided to use were, I used a place that is really easy, that I don't need my IS, but I brought my IS with, which would be Silent Valley. I used a place that I should be leveling in, where my IS is helpful, but not necessarily needed, which would be in Tanner Canyon. And then the third test is in a place, or the third place would be in a place that's difficult where I actually need my IS, no matter what. Which would be Field of Silence. So I picked a place that was really easy for me, a place that is pretty normal, and a place that was hard. My IS is running the same exact macro across the board, so all things were completely equal, and the only thing that has really changed is I ran this test over multiple locations for an hour of every single time. So let's get into the actual testing of this to find out which dual class setup of certificates is best. Let's see what we did. All right, for those of you that don't know, Master's Rage and Berserker's Rage are 2 dual class certifications that have a proc rate. Whenever you're using skills or whenever you're using basic attacks, they will proc on a certain number of times throughout, the day. So if you're using basic attacks, Berserker Rage will ultimately fire off whenever it decides to on whatever random scale. I also wanted to try to find out how often these particular skills would proc to find out if it's viable to continue to use them or if it's better to use a full-on using just attack. So test 1 is Master's Rage. It runs Master's Rage, Death, and Recovery. We did it in Tanner Canyon, and in Tanner Canyon we procced 38 times in an hour, and total proc time is going to be 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And in that 60 minutes of time, we gathered 8.464 trillion XP, which is pretty good. This is one of the better places for me to be leveling. There's a lot of weird inconsistencies that you're going to find as we kind of move forward. There's some things that are similar and things that aren't necessarily don't really make a lot of sense. The next place I tried was Silent Valley, which we procced Master's Rage 38 times for a total of 10 minutes of proc time. And you're probably wondering, well, why did you proc 38 times and only have 9 minutes and 30 seconds, and why did you proc 38 times and have 10 minutes? Well, what I observed during Silent Valley was 2 times I procced for 30 seconds instead of 15 seconds. The normal proc time for Master's Rage is 15 seconds, the same with Berserker's Rage. However, I noticed twice that it procced for 30 seconds, and it worked a full 30 seconds, which was really interesting. So that adds another 30 seconds to the full time, which is why Silent Valley is a total proc time of 10 minutes. So that means that you're getting that extra 27% skill power 10 minutes out of the 60 minutes that you're running. The other thing that I noticed in my test 1 in Tanner Canyon was that procs happen sporadically. They're not every minute on the minute or anything. I found sometimes they would proc in quick succession, and then other times I found that they would proc every 3 to 5 minutes apart sometimes. So it was really interesting to watch this and pay attention for that long. The next place that I checked was Field of Silence. This procced 36 times for a total proc time of 9 minutes and 30 seconds. My total test time was an hour. Oh, sorry. Let's go back. Let's take a look at Silent Valley. We had a total XP amount of 5.354 trillion, which is much less than Tanner Canyon. Field of Silence, we procced 36 times. The proc time was 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I also observed a 30-second proc 2 times when doing this test, and we got a total XP of 8.270 trillion XP. So in this test 1, our best place to be leveling was actually Tanner Canyon for the hour that we were running, which I found to be very interesting. All right, the second test that we did was Berserker's Rage. Now, Berserker's Rage, we did Berserker's Rage, Death, and Recovery. Berserker's Rage is the P attack by 27% during an attack. Death is 5% P skill or M skill critical damage, and then Recovery is minus 4% cooldown. We did the same test in Tanner Canyon, Silent Valley, and Field of Silence, and here are the test results. I did notice during this particular setup that test 2, the proc times are far greater than with Master's Rage, and you'll see that here. So Tanner Canyon, we proc 65 times for a total proc time of 14 minutes and 15 seconds. With a total test time of 60 minutes, we gathered 8.610 trillion XP, which was more than the original test by a little bit, by about 200 billion. Not bad. I also observed 30-second proc time 4 times, and I also noticed 2 times that this procced twice in a row, which I found to be really interesting. And the really odd one in this one is that I found a reproc once, which was I was in the middle of it procced, and when it got to about 7 seconds, it procced again. So it was actually like a proc and a half, it seemed, which this is the only time it ever happened. I never found this happening on any other time except for when I was in Tanner Canyon with Berserker's Rage, which I thought was odd. The next place we checked was Silent Valley, and here's another anomaly I found, which was this only procced 41 times for a total proc time of 10 minutes and 45 seconds, which is far less than the other locations during my testing. And we got a total XP of 5.45 trillion XP, which is pretty amazing, which is actually more, not by much, by about 100 million or 100 billion in Silent Valley. I also observed two 30-second procs during this time sequence, and then what I think I noticed here is that the proc is so low that I probably kill too fast for the area, and that's why it's not proccing as much. That's kind of what I've gathered from this particular instance. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's kind of what I feel like the case is. All right, the next place we checked was Field of Silence again, and we had a total proc of 65 times, same as the first time, but this only for a total proc time of 13 minutes and 45 seconds out of a total test time of 60 minutes. We gathered 8.418 trillion XP. I observed two 30-second procs, and I also observed two procs that procced twice in a row, which I found really interesting. So, yeah, some interesting things. So you get a lot more procs out of your Berserker's Rage when you're using your macro and your auto hunt. And I used macro and auto hunt throughout the whole testing sequence on everything. All right, test 3. This test is going to be with physical, attack, and recovery. Physical is going to be plus 9% P attack. Attack is going to be plus 9% P attack for a total of plus 18% P attack 100% of the time, along with recovery, which is the minus 4% cooldown. So the proc time and the test time are both 60 minutes total. So we have 100%, an extra 18% P attack. I wanted to see how these leveled up or held up against the Master's Rage and Berserker's Rage, because everybody says that those are the best, but I'm not certain that they are. So let's take a look at the numbers here. For test number 3, we tried out Tanner Canyon, and we gathered a total XP of 8.725 trillion XP, which is far more than either one of the other tests for test 1 or 2 for Master's Rage or Berserker's Rage. In Silent Valley, we've also found more XP, which was 5.550 trillion XP, which is a little bit more than Berserker's Rage and a little bit more than test 1 for Master's Rage. And then Field of Silence was the weird anomaly where we actually had less than both or less than the other ones, which was 8.415 trillion, which is a little bit less than Berserker's Rage. So in this instance, I believe that test 2 is still a little bit better in Field of Silence for a place that's a little bit harder. But overall, I believe that test 3 was far more successful than I was expecting it to be. All right, let's take a look at the next thing. All right, notes and conclusion. One thing I noticed that inconsistent proc times, that's definitely something to consider when choosing those dual class certifications of Master Rage or Berserker's Rage. They seem to be kind of consistent, but there's obviously some anomalies there that you're not getting as much. And I did this test 3 times. So I did test 1 3 times, I did test 2 3 times, and I test 3 times for a total of 27 hours of testing against this, because I wanted to see how close the proc times were. And I got various different things. You know, on occasion I had procs that were less. I never had procs more than what I showed in the testing. So those were the highest numbers I got. But for the other 2 tests that I tried, for test 1, 2, and 3, they were both less. So I probably should have taken an average, but they weren't far less. I mean, it was like by 2 or 3 each. So on occasion, they'd be 2 or 3 less than what I showed in the video. But proc times are not perfect. So, the multiple procs was interesting, 30-second procs. I don't know if that's like a critical proc or something like that. I thought that was kind of interesting when I found those, because that seemed to be a little bit more common with Berserker's Rage rather than Master's Rage. The reproc occurs on occasion, which I think that's an anomaly. I don't know. I only saw it happen one time in all of my testing out of all 27 hours of it. So I only happen to have it once. But the fact that it happens means that it could happen again, which means it's still inconsistent. One thing I am kind of curious about is whether or not this would change, whether or not you're running a P crit build versus a P skill crit build. I'm running a P skill crit build, so these values could change if you're running all full P crit. It could definitely be different. I am also curious to see if Master's Rage would actually improve if you have less cooldown, which I believe would probably affect those tests. So if you've ramped up tons and tons of cooldown, I'm guessing that Master's Rage might actually be better than Berserker's Rage or even P attack. So in conclusion, this is kind of what I found. Test 3 seemed to be the best one to go by. P attack was far superior than the other two. Test 2 for Berserker's Rage was moderate, which would be second, and then Test 1 Master's Rage, which is viable. They're all viable, they all work, but in my testing today, I found that P attack, having that 18% P attack over 100% of your time is really a huge benefit. So I hope you guys found this particular test interesting. I hope you found it insightful. I hope it helps you make decisions on whether or not you want to use some of those skills when building your tier. I don't know how well these would change versus a dagger class or a Yule or even a Feo. I'm sure that these types of things are probably a little bit different. But on the same flip side, I'm guessing that adding more P attack that's constant full all the time rather than something that procs all the time is probably going to be better in the long run. So in conclusion, I would say that anytime you get a chance to have a permanent automatic increase, it's probably better than anything that procs. So use this to your advantage. I hope this was insightful for you. I hope this guide helped you guys out. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next episode. Take care and be well.